most of you know about my passion for trains, well, this is the kissing cousin of the train, the tram. In the golden age of trams, there was hardly a city or a town in the world that didn't rely on them. And in places like Melbourne, that's still the case. But for those of us not lucky enough to experience the magic of travelling on a tram, there are places like this one, the Sydney Tramway Museum, where you can experience that unique part of our nation's heritage.
In their heyday, trams transported enormous numbers of people every day. This crushes Randwick Racecourse in Sydney during the 1920s, where more than 400 trams a day were used to manage the people traffic, moving 1,000 commuters a minute. Initially, trams were horse-driven and single-carriage outfits, but after the introduction of the steam engine, trams like this double-decker could handle the more difficult terrain. Electric systems were the next innovation. They started in 1889, and it wasn't long after Federation when all the networks across the country were converted to electricity.
Yes, please. Whoa, yeah. So where are you taking me today, Peter?
Oh, Watson's Bay.
Watson's Bay sounds fine.
OK, there we are.
Good. One child. Thanks very much. After the war, as towns and cities grew and distances became longer, dear old trams gave way to the motor car and the omnibus. It just seemed like trams just weren't economical in a modern city. So these graceful old ladies were put out to pasture.
At the Sydney Tramway Museum, you'll see the largest collection of trams in the Southern Hemisphere. 47 vehicles in total from all around the country, with a couple of international ring-ins from Japan, Germany, and even a San Franciscan cable car figures in the fleet. The real story here is the loving restoration of these grand old dames in the hands of devoted trammies and craftsmen like Jim Jowett. He's been a volunteer at the museum for 8 years. So what is it about trams that's so attractive?
More of this, it's working in the old-fashioned way. That's what I like. They're doing it hands-on stuff. So they give you a bit of old timber here right of the way, and now you've got to work out how to make it as it originally was.
You go back to the old drawings that the department had for the construction?
We work off photos and drawings.
And where you don't have it, I suppose?
Sure, you've got to improvise.
This beautiful tram is the oldest operating electric tram car in Australia. It's a C-class tram. First run, 1896. The restoration job is a real testament to the blokes that work here. They've done a beautiful job. The sign on the front of this tram reads, "No passengers." It did carry passengers, though. They were passengers of His Majesty. This was the prison van. Whilst it looks sturdy enough, there was one recorded escape. In 1946, a fellow called Darcy Dugan got out of this tram. There's a name to be reckoned with. You'll also find loads of tram memorabilia that can be a real education about the early part of this century.
These tramway destination boxes were colourful things. One of the reasons was that illiteracy was quite common in those days. And these colour codes made it easy for people to recognise where the tram was headed. I just had to take a ride on one of these old toast rack trams. It's like they're an icon of old Sydney. Aptly named because they look like a toast rack.
You'll even get a trip into the national park for the price of admission. $10 for adults, $5 for children and pensioners. And they're open Wednesdays, Sundays and public holidays. So if you're not familiar with trams or you want to relive a memory or two, you can hop on board one of these beauties and be transported back in time.